There we go. Well, it's a little after 5 p.m. and I'd like to call to order the Passion Pit Old Shore Beach Area Committee. And today we have on Monday, May 24th, it looks like 7 people in attendance and a couple of guests. If our guests would like to introduce themselves. So Administrator Yorkie is here.
Oh, hello. Yes, this is James Yorkie. I'm not on the committee and don't really have a role, but listening in, very interested in the discussion, and I'm here to help in any way I can.
Thank you so much. And then is Pat Strand there?
He may be just
Yes,
monitoring.
I'm here, just listening in.
All right, thank you so much, Pat. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right, and we may have some other members of our committee join us. We have had indication from them that they will be in attendance, so we'll look forward to them joining us. So as we get ready to call this meeting to order, the first item on our agenda is to adopt the agenda. Are there any additions or changes that people would like? If not, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I so move.
Thank you, Myron. So there's been a motion to approve the agenda. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Stacy. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, our next item on the agenda is to adopt the minutes of our May 10th meeting, and I'd like to thank Tim Nelson for getting out such detailed minutes. We had a lengthy meeting. Are there any corrections or changes? I see that Kelly is joining us right now. If there are no changes or corrections to the minutes, is there a motion to approve the minutes of our May 10th meeting?
I so move again.
Thank you, Myron, for your motion. Is there a second? Kelly, would you like to second the motion to approve the minutes? She's got her thumbs up. All right, that's a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Kelly, are you opposed? Do you have a change? No, that's an aye. Okay. Motion carried.
I'm having computer.
All right, that's why I asked. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, we had a number of public comments that came in a written fashion, but at this point in our agenda, we'd like to welcome any comments from the public who is here with us at our live stream meeting. So either Pat Strand or Administrator Yorkie, if either of you would like to make a comment.
No comments from the administrator, Madam Chair. Thank you.
And Pat, any comments you would like to share with this group?
Just would really like to see this stay within the county. This is kind of a historical place.
All right, thank you so much. Any other public comments? Other public comments?
I'm just here as a spectator too, so I'm not on the committee.
You're here regularly. We appreciate your involvement and engagement. Any other public comments? All right, if not, we will move on. To begin with, we want to look at our short-term work. This is the work that involves managing what we are referring to as Passion Pit. And we want to talk a little bit about the results of the Old Shore Road Survey. And these were sent out by Director Nelson. And in addition, they were also posted this afternoon when they were compiled and they were put on the website. So any comments that individuals would like to make about those results, or Tim, maybe you would want to just do a brief verbal summary for those that are here at the meeting today with us.
Yeah, and I was kind of messing around with it. I think I can even pop those up on the screen here. Wow, interesting. Can you guys see that?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah, so what we have is the distribution of elements where people took a survey on, and this is the Old Shore Road residents that we sent direct letters to gather that up. And interestingly enough, none of the elements received 100% of the vote. So people voted mostly in favor of waste receptacle, pet waste, and then an official line survey from that, and then parking and an informational sign, and porta pot kind of came in last. These last two down on the bottom are actually associated with the sign one. I had a redundancy of questions on there, so I took those off early in the survey. So if someone were to go to the survey now, those questions wouldn't even be up there because they're in the next questions. So as you can see, the few of those, it's kind of what we had talked already about, mostly looking at the waste receptacles and pet waste. And after this, we'll talk about updates in terms of what we have or what we can look at being done in the near future with regards to the surveys and other stuff that we've been talking about. So there are a lot of interesting comments that had come up with regards to any of these issues, whether it's a lot talking about signage, some talking about the waste receptacles. Like if you start putting it out, you really have to be careful about how it's done so that it doesn't turn into just kind of your accessory people's household waste that they want to just bring out there. So it's really important that care is really taken for that. And then signage, it was interesting because there's a smattering of what people wanted to see on the sign if there were going to be a sign and such. And you have, of course, the most is no littering, and then you have respecting the neighboring properties, no trespassing and such. And they all pretty much did receive a lot of scores on there. Again, in this one, not any one of them received 100%. So some people did vote for some and not others, which is interesting. But yeah, some of these other comments that had come in to this, looking at quiet hours or just different ways of phrasing things, was kind of interesting to have it on there. Let me see. Oh, and then the other suggestions or comments, there's quite a few, talking about, and it's not just what to do out there. Some say, just leave it the way that it is. And there was a lot that have been expressed in terms of making sure that if people that traffic is directed to come in and out from the east side. And certainly, it's understandable where people who live in the center part of the road or the west part don't want that increase in traffic, but at the same time, it would also increase the traffic for the people who live on the east side. So it's got to kind of strike that balance or contemplate as to how that would be if traffic is going to be directed on that. And so say limit the ATV use or speed limit signs. One says add a gate with a lock for a parking area, and it's a little difficult. We first have to even identify get the official survey done in terms of what is the county's property we're looking at, because, in our discussion, it's clear most of what we want to do, we want to try to avoid doing anything that impacts that MnDOT parcel until it is actually resolved in terms of what's going to be done. It's a whole lot easier to tend to the issues that are on the county short, narrow strip in there. And of course, one of the comments too was about filling up the potholes and the holes in the gravel in that parking area, and that's something that we can do, but it's also, again, something that we should really be aware of where the property lines are. And then again, this goes to the general type of comments, and all of this document is up on the agenda and on the county's main website. So all of this you'd be able to read on there. So I don't know, unless there are any other real specific questions, I guess that kind of sums it up. There are a lot of comments that are on there, and one of the ones that's not, number 11 kind of sums up some of the thoughts about the specific use of porta pots in there, that they're not really excited about having a porta pot out there. But then again, nobody's really excited about anybody utilizing the woods as a porta pot either. So that's kind of where that's at, unless there are any other questions from the group at this point.
Well, I'd just like to thank you for summarizing everything and putting it together in a format where it's easy to understand and to access all the information. We appreciate that.
I have a question.
Yes, Stacy.
I guess I should have asked earlier, but the survey was sent specifically to people with Old Shore Road addresses. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
So it's not anyone who lives east on the Chippewa Trail or people who live in the other direction. It's just right on the road. Is that right?
Right on the road, or right at the edge of the road or so. The other document that's up there, the public comments, those have come in, and those are in the other bundle that's in the agenda packet on there. So I try to keep that separate.
Okay, thank you.
All right, well, let's talk a little bit about that other feedback. We had several news releases that went out. We had one in the Cook County News Herald. It was on Boreal. It was on the county website, WTIP. And we did get quite a bit of feedback, which Tim always spent time with over the last few days and gathered it together for us. And Tim, is that something you can pull up as well on your screen?
Yeah, let me see if I can get that.
And I felt it was interesting as I was looking through it that many of the comments from the general public paralleled comments that had been made by those residents, whether seasonal or year-round, on Old Shore Road. Kind of interesting.
Okay, yeah, this is illustrated as just a bunch of emails that had come in. And again, all the members had been sent this as a PDF packet, and this is also on the website one. And there's certainly I don't know that we're hearing much in terms of new on here. I think it kind of reinforces some of a lot of the comments that have already been made, in the kind of division of thoughts on this as to whether to leave it in public, or the concerns that there would be, or to kind of emphasize making sure that it gets to the tribe. There were a lot of comments with that in terms of wanting to make sure that it would restore to the Grand Portage area there. So there's a lot of comments, and I think there's one that had come in by virtue of photograph, and I hope that would be legible enough for people to be able to read through.
Yes, absolutely. So it seems that the comments that came following the news release, this collection here of public comments, talk not only about the specific conditions along Old Shore Road, which we would like to help manage in the short term, but also talk about the disposition of that property. And a number of those comments making reference to supporting the disposition to Grand Portage.
Correct.
All right. Any comments from members of the committee regarding the collection that we have?
I saw that it was shared this afternoon and sent in my email, guys. I have not been able to read through it because of being at work and then coming home and hopping on here. So, but I will get to them.
Okay. So I think it's interesting that it reflects some of the conversations that we have, both about maintenance of the area currently and also the long-term disposition of the property. And it's interesting, it talks about preserving the area, kind of that whole idea of education, maintenance, and sharing it with the public, which seems to be a pretty common theme. All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Nelson, for sharing that, and again, for compiling all of that. Not an easy task. And it's nice that it's all out in public so everyone can see what we have gotten to this point in time. Another piece that we need to think about as we make decisions or recommendations about short-term work is survey lines of parcels. And I know, Mr. Nelson, that you had spoken to MnDOT about some of their engineers and doing some of the survey work because of the fact that they were already in the county and had intended to come over and do that work. Have you received any information on a date when that work might be done?
Well, I have had a few conversations with Wayne Hill, the MnDOT engineer, district engineer for this area, and he's kept tabs and he has assigned the crew. There is a survey crew, MnDOT survey crew up in our area, and he did task them to go ahead and get that done. So they're trying to do that in between the stuff that were actually sent up here to begin with to do. Last time I touched base with him, he said it would be within a few weeks. I will keep checking with him and because as soon as they're done with that, I'm in contact with Wayne Henchy, our contracted surveyor, who will, as soon as their MnDOT is done, will go ahead and verify our lines, the county lines. And I see Dave had his hand up.
Mr. Homiak, you have a question?
MnDOT has marked the boundaries on the cart path side, but not the lake side. And so you can see the linear footage. There are pink tags that indicate where the posts are. I think that piece has always been fairly well defined. The posts were found and identified even prior to them marking them with pink tape. The one that remains to be identified is the corner of the Quaife property and the Old Shore Road north-south appendage. MnDOT doesn't do that one, of course.
Okay, I think Wayne Henchy can do that for us then.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. It's good to get that update. And
Tim,
I see that. Go
Tim,
ahead.
did Dwayne indicate that they would survey and identify that corner as well? Because I think they're done. They came out and marked and they left. They didn't mark that corner that you were after.
Yeah, Dwayne said that they weren't going to do any associated with the county. That they were going to just do their
Right.
Corners.
Okay.
And so yeah, I'll be in touch. I've been in touch with Wayne, not Dwayne, but Wayne Henchy.
Got it.
And I'll talk to him tomorrow and get him started on that.
Because I saw one of the comments from Quaife was in regards to
Right.
trespassing on the corner of his property there. But I don't think he or any of the realtors that sold him that property know where that corner is.
I would agree. I would agree. All right, well, we'll get that identified, and that, of course, is important so that once we make a determination what we need to do in this short-term period to get ready for tourist season, we can act quickly. So as soon as that is surveyed, we can provide some response. Speaking of response, we wanted to get some information on our political entities and what involvement and assistance they would provide. And I know, Kelly, you had an opportunity at your most recent city meeting. And can you tell us a little bit about what you found out at your city meeting?
So the city council met May 12th. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend. I got called away for a family medical. And I did talk with Jay prior to the meeting and told him kind of what information I was looking for. And followed up then with a conversation with Mike Roth. Mike said if we need to provide a garbage, can and some liners, that's something that we can easily do right now. We don't have any additional pet stations available. He did tell me the cost of them, and we didn't. I'm not going to volunteer that we'll purchase it, but I'll put it out there to see, what people are interested in, where we go with this. The dog stations themselves with just the liner bin is about $100, Mike thought. If you add a small, tiny little trash can onto it, they go up to somewhere between $300 and $400. But if we have a trash can there, I don't know. So anyway, Mike, at this time, and we're probably no different than any other entity, due to staffing shortages and numbers, that we would not be able to provide staff to go maintain the area right now. That's just kind of where we're at. So that was the conversation that Mike and I had.
Okay, great. So looking at, we could do a garbage can with liners, potentially a pet station at a cost of $100. Okay, and then we'd have to figure out the maintenance.
Yeah, and we didn't state that we would buy the pet station, and I don't even know if that's something, that's wanted there or not, depending upon where we go with what we decide tonight. But I could bring it, if the county is not interested in doing that, I could bring it back to the council and ask that question.
All right. Well, thank you. And it's good just to have an idea what that station would cost. That's very helpful. Very helpful. All right. Tim, you were going to talk a little bit about potentially some services and maintenance. And I know I said I would check on the ability to get some gravel up there to put in the hole that's in the parking lot. And I did speak with Robbie Haas, and he indicated we would be able to get gravel to put into that area so that we wouldn't have that big depression and that big puddle of water. And he said, even if that is a little bit over on the MnDOT side, that would not be problematic. So he felt very comfortable with the fact we could bring some gravel in there to level off that area and make it a little more safe. What did you find out in your discussions, Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I spoke with Robbie a little bit too about that, but also about, because it had been brought up as a potential that maybe the highway crew could help with the waste receptacle and stuff like that. And Robbie indicated that they would not be able to staff managing the waste receptacle, but I did then speak with our maintenance department, who they do go out to our public landings, like up at SAG and some of the other places, and they do service some of the facilities up there. And so Brian did indicate to me that they certainly would be open to discussing, providing those kinds of waste retrieval and servicing of waste cans up there, depending on, the frequency and what size and everything like that. And of course, we certainly would want to, there's enough caution in the comments about making sure we don't put out a big, huge thing, because then it'll turn into household garbage or so. So he did, though, indicate that he would certainly be willing to discuss that aspect of it.
Well, that's great. Thank you. Mr. Homiak.
Before you leave the topic of gravel and fill, I'd like to make sure that they're also repairing their section of the road there. As people exit that lot, they like to spin their wheels, particularly youngsters with their nice cars. And so it's rutted and full of potholes. And for the last 25 years, I've, out of my pocket, filled it. And that was before I learned that that's all county road. And so if they're going to fill the large hole, I'd like them to also repair the potholes.
All right. Well, I will talk with Robbie about that.
Thank you
for bringing that up. Appreciate it. All right. So that's kind of all the homework that we were supposed to do. And then we need to kind of talk about what we have discovered, and now that we've completed our homework, and talk about what recommendations we want to make for this short-term maintenance. In reviewing the survey results, it certainly seems like there's strong support by those living along Old Shore Road for a waste receptacle, for pet waste, and then for the survey work to be done. And so I think those are pretty clearly things that this group could move forward with. And so, Mr. Homiak, you have a question.
Less a question than a comment. It seems like you could also do the signs that are recommended.
And certainly we would, we need to look at that signage and know that it's going to take some time to do signs. In the comments that I reviewed, I saw, a number of people that talked about a sign indicating no turnaround or dead end, something of that nature. And I did check with Robbie. We don't have any of those available in the county. So we would need to look at getting that printed up, and there would be some turnaround time for the no turn around. But certainly
I have that sign. It was there. I took down all of my signs as a result of some of the events of last summer.
Okay.
But I have a sign that I purchased that I had on the telephone pole there that indicated it was private road and there was no turnaround, and there was, but I don't want to put it back up unless it's a sanctioned sign because it's county property.
Right. And so we'll talk tonight about what this group wants to do, and then determine if we want to
But
move forward with that.
I'm more concerned. I was the one who requested that sign, and I'm the only one who requested it. There were a number of people who requested the signs indicating to respect private property boundaries and that the property extends to the low water mark. Those are sign requests that had a number of, 80% of the 17 respondees indicated that they were interested in those signs.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm much more interested in those signs.
Okay. All right. And I see Tim has joined us. Welcome.
Yes, sorry I was late. I had a bad experience with bees today and ended up in the emergency room.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
So I got out at 5 and at 4, actually about 4:30, and I wanted to get on right away. So.
All right. Do you have an EpiPen handy in case?
I do now.
All right. I've had that same experience. So yeah, keep that with you this time of year. I also see Kay Marine has joined us, and David Roll is in the process of joining us. Welcome to you both. So just to recap for those that have recently joined, we have been reviewing the results of our survey and also of the information and feedback we've received since the press release was sent out. And then also have spoken a little bit about what the city and the county are able to provide in terms of service and maintenance. So that's kind of where we are on the agenda. We're down right now at number 5, letter E. So as we look at the results of our survey, just to step back for a moment, we've indicated that a wet waste receptacle was something that people really wanted, that a pet waste dispenser would be highly valuable, and that we wanted the survey done. Those were the top 3 things that were listed. So would somebody like to make a motion to move forward on those 3 items and to make a recommendation to the city and the county to provide those items and those services? Again, that would be a waste receptacle provided by the city and some maintenance done by the county, a pet waste container. And Kelly, if the city can't pay for that, we will find funds to pay for that. All right.
Yeah, nothing would happen until the next city council meeting.
Right, right. And then the third thing would be to complete that survey on the west side so that we have a line on the Quaife property. So is there a motion to move forward on those 3 items?
I'll make a motion to move forward on the 3 items, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Stacy. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
I'll second that motion, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I have a second from Myron and from David. All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. All right, the next thing we want to look at is additional signage. And as we're looking at signage, maybe Mr. Homiak, you would like to restate what you have available just for those that recently joined the call. And I see that Maria Burnett has just joined us as well.
Before any of this started, I tried a number of sign options, including park closes at 10 o'clock, et cetera, and I learned in painstaking detail about the enforcement rules with regard to the beach itself, the DOT property, and the county property. It seems all 3 of them have different enforcement agencies with different rules or lack of rules. And so all of those signs were taken down at the request of the DNR. I did have a sign that I placed on the telephone pole that said privately maintained road, no turnaround, no outlet. And because of a variety of encounters I had with the public at that time about the road, I took that sign down as well until some governing body, and I don't know if that's you guys or who that is, but somebody could put up a sign. Because the road is a privately maintained driveway. It's not 2 lanes. There's no place to turn around. And tourists like to just drive the road, and they like to follow the shoreline, and they like to look at the houses along the shore. And they get to the end of it and they have to turn around in Hedstrom's driveway. And Margaret's not here to tell you about her driveway, but if she were, or they turn around in my driveway. But I think if you drive all around Cook County, you'll find people do everything from placing road graders and cars at the ends of their driveway during tourist season to keep people from simply treating it like a county road and driving up it. And that's what happens with this. I'd simply like people to know that there's no way out of there unless they want to back up. And so, I mean, there isn't anything to prohibit anybody from driving the 400 feet down that road. But they're trespassing as soon as they turn around in somebody's driveway. And it seems, I mean, if we all have to, in order to eliminate this problem, if we all have to put no trespassing signs at the ends of our driveway, precisely 17 feet from the center line of that road in order to make it stop, and then we have to call the sheriff. I mean, it seems like it would be a better use of everybody's time and money to simply tell people there's no way out of there. And if you'd like, I could put my sign back up. But I'd prefer that since it's county land and it's a county road and county right away, that they do that.
Understandable. Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And I think it's kind of a good point there. There are other aspects involved in this as well. And I think we need to probably have a conversation with Robbie, the highway engineer, in terms of, are they even able to allow a sign that doesn't meet the specs for a sign and whatnot? So I think we should take this in a couple different steps, or separate it into a couple different issues. So there's clearly the issue of signage to prevent people from trespassing down that cartway. And then there's also the informational sign, having it on the county property in terms of other kind of instructional things, such as, you know, quiet hours or no trespassing or whatever the case may be. So I think if we can separate out those two, and yeah, we can have a conversation with Robbie to see what we can do. And maybe that was just the purview of the previous highway engineer that made the determination that it should be taken down, or what. And we're talking kind of short term at this point in time too.
Right. Robbie indicated to me that he could order a sign, but it would take several months before we would be able to get a sign.
Wow.
And so I guess one thing I could do is, if the committee would like me to do so, is talk to him tomorrow to see if in fact we could get permission. If Dave, you would be willing to share your sign that says no turnaround, no outlet, and to put that up until the county was able to get a sign put up on that telephone pole. I know exactly where you're speaking to. Is that something, Dave, you would be willing to do?
I'd be happy to do that. I'd run down there right now tonight, put 2 screws back in that sign and put it back right where it was, knowing that it's a sanctioned sign.
So let's, Myron, I see you
Yeah,
have your
would it be
hand.
appropriate to make a motion to do that? At least we've got it in. our-
Yes, I do think that would be
Mhm.
appropriate to do.
If there's
So are
no-
you saying you would like to make that motion?
Yes, I will.
Is there a second to that motion?
I can second that,
Thank you,
Madam
Tim.
Chair.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Kelly, are you opposed?
I am. I think that there needs to be more information from the county highway department in following rules and laws than just, I understand that we're supporting something, but I think you need to have an understanding of what the rules and regs are.
Mr. Nelson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. That is a really good point. And I think maybe the motion could be amended to say that we support putting up the signs subject to the authorization from the county engineer with regards to the rules and regs.
All right. Mr. Homiak?
The placement of that sign is not on county property. The placement of that sign is on the cart path.
Cart path.
And the cart path is not county property. The cart path
is-
at that specific location is on MnDOT property, and we have an easement. The property owners on that road have an easement to
Correct.
traverse
It's 33 feet, I believe.
34 feet.
34?
So
Okay.
the specific placement of that sign is not on county property.
All right. Tim?
In hindsight, I knowing, and I don't know what the laws are in Minnesota with regards to cart paths, but a lot of times when a cart path or road easement is put through, that may be essentially the property of the county. So I think even though it's on the cart path, it could be county property, even though it's MnDOT property that it accesses. I think that property, since there isn't an incorporated area, probably is of the rights of the county.
Mr. Nelson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think we can probably circle back to my original suggestion that we go ahead and amend the motion to support the placement of the signs subject to the appropriate approvals. And we can talk to both Robbie and MnDOT and make sure, because I think at this point in time, probably everybody would be on board to make sure, that we can do this unless there's really something overriding to say that we can't.
Absolutely. So the motion, if amended, would indicate we'd put up a no turnaround, no outlet sign temporarily, subject to authorization by either MnDOT or the county. And then the county would order a sign, if appropriate, to replace it. Everybody happy with that amendment? So Myron, you made the motion. Is that okay with you?
Yes, yeah,
All right.
I was supporting it and, yeah, in general, and the intent was that it needed to be approved by the county highway engineer.
Okay. And Tim, how do you feel about that?
No, that makes a lot of sense. That was a good suggestion by Tim. So,
All right.
or
So let's take a
recommendation
vote again with our amendment. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Great. All right, so now we have some other signs, and this probably will take a little bit more time because we have to dig into feedback from the survey and also from the feedback that was provided by the general public. And so everyone may want to look back at that. One of the things I see both in comments with both groups is talking about hours. And we know that there are enforcement issues with hours, but what we could certainly do is some type of signage with 3 or 4 general things on there and say something like recommended quiet times. Now we know from speaking with Sheriff Eliason, again, that is not something that's enforceable. But what we want to do is in a positive fashion, encourage people to do the right thing and to be respectful to our property owners. So if we were to talk about quiet hours, last time looking at my notes, we had talked a little bit about quiet hours beginning at 10 p.m. Do we want to put an end time on that, or do we just want to put a start time on that? Or how do people feel about that in general? Mr. Omiak.
10 to 6 would be great. The challenge is enforcement. The only place the county can enforce anything is on the 37 feet that they own.
Right.
And so if there's somebody sitting in the parking lot with a boom box, or they've got their car stereo cranked up to 100 decibels and they're listening to it there, then you could make a call and you could have them, sheriff, come down and ask them to leave or to turn it down. Since that parking lot itself is the source of most of the traffic, maybe you just close the parking lot at 10 p.m. That's county property. And I don't know that it requires a law change to close that property at a specific time. But it might be easier to do that than to try and force a noise ordinance. The only law that's in place is the one that Pat talked about. And he said it's 12 to 6. And it was largely a result of people like Kelly in the city complaining about the bars and the music, which is no different out here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you've got 50 J1s from across the street who come down on Monday and Tuesday nights to party all night long on their days off, the county literally can't do anything to stop them from doing that. The 240 feet that's owned by MnDOT, the county does not have enforcement rights on. They can't enforce that county ordinance on it either. So all that they can do is chase people out of that parking lot. But people who are sitting at a campfire, drinking beer, raising hell all night long, there isn't a law on the books that can shut that down, according to the DNR that's responsible for the beach. The only enforcement agency for the MnDOT property is MnDOT itself. And Dwayne Hill, as Tim Nelson knows, has 2 options. He can leave it open, or he can mark it no trespassing. As soon as he slaps no trespassing signs on it, then it's enforceable. But that's different. That's a blanket prohibition from anybody going there.
Mhm.
MnDOT does not enforce parks. They don't have any rules that say you can't drink here, or you can't make noise here after 10 o'clock, or you can't be here after midnight. And that's the very crux of the problem that I raised a year ago that led to property owners here requesting that that property be sold.
Okay.
So any sign that you put up, it truly is simply a recommendation.
Mhm.
It's not enforceable on anything other than the 37-foot strip owned by the county. And the county's only enforcement is midnight to 6.
Mhm. Kelly, you have your hand up.
Thank you. I just wonder, and granted, this is county property, it is not city, so we have no say, no jurisdiction, but I'm cautious of the precedent that we set as we go forward. I know this area is a little bit unique of its location and the things that happen there. But I also think there's other areas within the county, lake properties. I could think of where our family cabin is and people that trespass down private roads and different things that happen. There's a gravel pit in the area that people would sometimes camp in that don't belong there. I'm not against putting signage, but at the same time, I think we have to be cautious about what is it that we want to say. And as Dave said, if you really can't enforce any of the rules that you put up, I'm not certain it can help, but I'm not certain what it does. And I think it leads a following of other people within the county that said, well, gee, the squeaky wheel got the oil. So this is what I want, and this is what I want. Again, I'm not saying it can't be done. I just think as a precedent, again, more for the county, how do you want these things to work going forward?
It's a very good point. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Homier.
That's exactly the discussion I had with the DNR last year. And the DNR point blank told me, if you want us to come down and enforce disorderly conduct rules or other state laws on this property, then we're going to have to double our staff and apply that same rule to Paradise Beach and every other public piece of beach in the county. Now, this isn't new. Passion Pit has been the lawless place for the entire 25 years that I've been here for exactly these reasons. It's a jurisdictional problem. So I welcome the county buying it and applying real rules to it. But as it stands today, the DNR will not come down there and ever ask anybody to leave. Mary Manning will not get up at midnight and drive down there and break up a party. The sheriff will not come down and break up a party. They will ask them to be quiet. And they'll say, I'm going to wait here until you guys leave and I'll cite you for DWI. But literally, there's nothing they can do. And that's what I live next to. And that's what I've attempted over and over to try and remedy. So I do welcome signage that says there is private property next door and it extends to the low water mark. I welcome that sign. That helps us a great deal. But in terms of noise and hours, that's a very ticklish problem you're wading into.
So other thoughts, we brought up hours. That was one of the things that was mentioned in the survey. There were a number of comments about positive comments, trying to direct people with positive behaviors as well. Mr. Nelson. Your mic is muted.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Witzman has his hand up.
Yes, Mr. Witzman.
I was just going to say, I think we need to keep in mind that we're talking about, this is a short-term solution. I think that long-term we have concerns about enforcement, but we don't know who the end user will be of that property. I haven't, and I've not been there nearly, Dave lives next to it, but I haven't experienced the 25 years of the problems that he's experienced. But I think that, most of the people that go down there are respectful. And if you get a disrespectful person, a sign isn't going to make a difference to them. So it's a reminder to people that go down there that there is respect the property owners on either side of you of this property. Keep in mind that there's people that live, I don't know how you do it. I think a historical statement would be helpful too, but it's just asking people to be good neighbors, good stewards of that section of the beach. And then at some point, if somebody does purchase that property or is given the property, then they'll have to make determination what the rules for that property are. But we're looking short term at the guidelines for that property.
That's a very good point. And maybe it's such that a sign could be quite general and say something to the effect, please respect our neighbors, our land, and our water. And kind of covering, a variety of the things that have been listed by people, both in the survey and in the feedback. Kelly, you have a comment.
Well, I like your please respect our, but I'm going to change it a little bit. And I like the positive spin where we say thank you for respecting our land, our neighbors, and our water. I think that's just I don't know, whenever you can be positive, I think that's a good thing to be.
All right, so we have thank you for respecting our neighbors, our land, and our water. How do people feel about that? Stacy.
You could add miigwech to the sign. Thank you, miigwech, for respecting the neighbors, our land and our water.
Thank you. That's an excellent suggestion. And gets very much at our history and at what this group has talked about repeatedly over our 3 meetings. Mr. Homiak.
The public at large doesn't understand the property rules along Lake Superior, and I'm going to insist that you put something on that sign that explains that the property boundaries extend to the low water mark. Otherwise, I have situations like the one that's carefully detailed in the police blotter in the Cook County Herald from April 25th. Okay, where I have to confront somebody who's trespassing on my property, who insists that they have every right to be there because their father is the director of planning and zoning, and who file a police report that I'm harassing them while standing on my own property. And it has to stop. Okay, you researched the number of trespassing calls and you came back and said there were 1. There's no trespassing call shown on that August 25th police blotter, but there is a detailed dissertation from Miss Lane that makes me look like some kind of stalker while standing on my own property. Miss Lane destroyed my Sunday. She destroyed 2 days of my life this week after I read that and had to process that. I'm not a stalker. I shouldn't be portrayed as a stalker who doesn't want random strangers walking through my yard. There isn't anybody on this call who wants that. And so I insist that you put something on the sign besides the positives that you've mentioned that explains that private property extends to the low water mark, because people don't understand that. And it's not tourists. 95% of my trespassing calls have been locals.
Okay. So it sounds like to me that sign might need to be, if it's something that people are interested in doing, might need to be in a different location. How do others feel about that?
Their gateway to that to the beach is through your county property.
If they use that path, correct.
All of them.
Tyson, I see your hand was up.
I don't know why this issue can't be solved by Mr. Homiak putting a sign up on the corner of his property. Seems like
Tyson, I have signs on both corners of my property and they've been there for a year. Have you been down there and looked at them? I can't make them much larger. I'd have to put up billboards, but I can't put them at water's edge. The lake washes them away. I mean, there are fundamental problems with trying to enforce a private property signage on the shore when you have wave action. My signs are clearly visible to anybody who looks up from their feet, and they've been there for a year.
So what's the difference of putting it on the side of the parking lot then? I mean, you make your point as a private property owner, protect your boundaries, but
Yeah,
that's your job, not ours.
it is. And that's my whole point is you want to operate a park next to me, but you don't want to tell anybody that they can't roam the full length of the beach. You've made it my problem.
I think this is an issue that, as I read through the other survey results from other property owners, I saw a couple of comments to that effect, but not a large number. I know there was a remark by Bill DeWitt that was included in our survey and indicated he felt, now I know this is different than what you reported, Mr. Homiak, but because you talked about there had been issues for 25 years, he felt there had been issues just in the last year that due to the pandemic and the number of people, the huge increase coming into Cook County, that it was more of a short-term issue.
Bill DeWitt is a new property owner. And if you're familiar with the exact layout of the property here, Carter's, Hedstrom's, Hanson's, a new property owner now who we don't know the corner of his property. That recently changed hands. There was an absentee owner there for 30 years. And the 2 lots that were recently sold by the DOT that are now in private hands from a couple in San Francisco, those are the property owners on this piece of beach.
Mhm.
Bill DeWitt is at the far end of the beach, and now his property is separated by 3 other private parcels. And Hanson marks their property as no trespassing. And unfortunately, he's not on this committee to represent himself. Otherwise, he'd be the one echoing my comments about his experience with people on his property.
So how does the committee feel about a sign related to the low water mark? Is this something that the group is interested in pursuing, or is this something that we feel private property owners should be doing?
My sign does say that.
Yes, I've seen your sign. Yep. Mr. Nelson.
Yeah.
I'm not, you're
Kelly.
cutting out, Mr. Nelson.
I'm sorry.
You were cutting out.
Oh, okay. Kelly had her hand up for a while, but no, she took it down. Never mind.
Yeah, I felt that, I guess I don't understand Mr. Homiak's pain. I don't live there. That we kind of needed to bring it back to what this committee is supposed to do. The name dropping and different things, I don't feel moves us forward, and I would like to see us move forward and spend our time productively.
Thank you. So let's look now at some of the other comments. Do we feel comfortable, first of all, with the sign that we've talked about to this point? Miigwech, for respecting our neighbors, our land, and our water. So would someone like to make a motion to explore the production of that sign?
So moved.
Thank you, Tyson. Is there a second to that
I
motion?
will say,
Thank you, Kelly. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Do committee members feel that there is other signage or other things that we should explore? Perhaps not tonight at this meeting, but that given the comments that were provided by our community at large, as well as the residents, anything in addition we want to explore? Again, this is for the short term. All right. If not, we will move on to our long-term work. And under long-term work, we want to always give an opportunity. Kim, I see your hand up.
Let me see. I was just asking, do you know, did the county survey agent came out a week ago last Friday? And did he provide any results from that? Because they actually came up to our cabin and were marking our poles and put some flags. I think they got kind of an idea of the lay of the land. They probably didn't actually put poles in the ground, is my guess. But I was wondering if we got any feedback from that.
Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, and Tim, you kind of came in late into the meeting. You missed that. MnDOT, there's two different survey elements that are working out there. There's the MnDOT crew, and then once MnDOT is done, and we heard that they did finish up, we don't have the results for them, but I'm going to be talking to Dwayne tomorrow about that and confirming that, and then we will be getting Wayne Henchy out right away for the county portion.
Oh, okay, great. Sorry to bring up an old issue.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate doing that. So we wanted to provide time each meeting as we discuss the long-term work that we have with talking about history. And last time we met, we had some history shared that Stacy had written. And we know that Tribal Chair Bobby Deshaw recommended that John Moran have the opportunity to share history as well, being such an expert. And John is not with us this evening, but Bobby or Stacy, is there any additional history or stories that you would like to share that may direct us as we continue our work? All right, if not, we will move forward. The next item on our agenda is to talk about renaming Passion Pit. And we have received one additional name since we last met, and it was Chippewa City Beach. So if we could add that to our list of suggestions. And then right before the meeting, and I'm not sure everybody has had a chance to see what came. Stacy, can you pronounce this for us?
Well, Chairman Dishaw sent this along. Do you want to talk about it, Bobby?
It was just something that I found that kind of fits the area there. I don't know if anybody's got a chance to see it or not.
The translation that we have is, it's peaceful and the lake is nice and calm. That feels very relaxing right now. Stacy, can you share with us the pronunciation?
Sure. It's Awibamagud Gichi Anwatin Igaye.
Thank you. I'm going to have to practice that before I repeat it. But that is very calming and very nice. And I want to thank Chairman Deshaw for sending us that. We probably aren't in a position to talk about renaming it this position because we still have other work and tasks, but as I've had a chance to visit with community members, people are very excited that we're looking at it at this place in a more respectful fashion. And so I think in the long term, this is going to be something very positive for this very, very special place. The next item on our agenda is to look at the work that the Cook County Historical Society is doing in conjunction with Passion Pit. And we had a meeting recently. Myron is the representative as vice president of the Cook County Historical Society. And because the church is tied to this land and because of the history, there may be some special connections, not only historically and spiritually, but physically, that we may want to talk about. And so Myron, what conversations have you had with the Historical Society about connecting the church and the property down by the lake?
Well, it has been brought up, and I think you were at the last meeting and suggested it as well, that this has some real potential for us. I had walked with Rena Rogers when I was a commissioner along the highway there and looked at how there could be a physical connection from the church property to this. And so that would need some survey work as well, and it might be some construction issues, but you definitely could use the shoulder of the road. But I think that would need to be a study in and of itself. The Historical Society's land stops at a certain place, and then we'd have to look at egress or access that could be done legally, and more than likely would go down that road that's there right now. I did take a look. We don't have a lot of space where the church is, but I believe that the Historical Society, there is a graveyard north of the highway there.
Correct.
And I don't know a lot of details about that, and that's something that would need to be explored as well. So, you know, it's part of our overall plan. We have a proposal in to a national parks grant. It's application for up to $500,000 to fix up the church and do some work there. So that could be part of that, but that's a work in progress. And right now we don't have any funding. And fixing up the church itself, is, we all agree that's a real gem. And we want to, it's going to take around maybe 300, or maybe that's the last estimate, was $285,000 to structurally fix up the church. So to maintain it and sustain it in the future. So it needs some work, but I think if we do get this grant, we have some more potential, up to $500,000 to do some more work, which could be that. But I think that would take a joint effort, I guess, with MnDOT and maybe the county. And we certainly be willing to get involved in that.
And perhaps to the, work with Grand Portage, that all the entities can work together so that place and the history is connected.
Sure.
But I would agree with you, there's great potential.
Right. And I think that's something that will be long-term, because I think once the ownership of that land is settled, the MnDOT property, that's sort of part of it. But I think we could explore and do a study about feasibility and what is possible. And, but I think that's going to take some time.
Precisely. And in the long run, it might be that there is money to fix the church up, and maybe people are parking there rather than down by the shore and walking from the church down to the shore. That might alleviate several problems.
Sure. I did take a look at that, and right now there's not a lot of space there. But
right.
It's possible that it could be done, but it would take some, definitely some kind of construction, land development, because there's not current space there to do that. There's just no roadway or anything to go. So that's something that have to be looked at, and would actually require, I guess, some money to do a study as well.
Right. And I know from events that have occurred, and others please chime in, at the Chippewa City Church in the past, you can fit maybe 8 cars in there, and that's kind of packing them in when they need to turn around and get back out on the highway. But it does offer us the possibility of a pathway down to the lake, maybe a pathway down along Old Shore Road on the east end. So anyway, there are those opportunities, and something to continue to explore and to, like you say, study.
I could add too that we do have a facilities committee and we've been talking about other specific projects right now. But this certainly could be something that we could get on our agenda once this progress, we go through our process with this study and the work of the county.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that update. Appreciate it. Any other comments or questions for Myron regarding the involvement of the Historical Society and connecting Chippewa City Church? Yes, Tim.
Yeah, Myron, I was just going to ask, we went into the historical site, I think it was a week ago, and one of the things we noticed was there really wasn't any connection to point, or if something, it's not like you get a lot of traffic, but it seems like Chippewa City is such a big portion of the history of the community. But yet, when I went in there, there wasn't much in the Historical Society building. There was one, my wife commented that there was only one board that talked about the history of Chippewa City. And maybe something you may want to consider is how do you tie those together a little more closely? So somebody who was learning about the lumber industry and all of that is also tied into Chippewa City, so they understand, the Native American culture of this area and how important that is.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good suggestion. In the past, there was direction to the church and there was volunteers at the church to keep it open at certain times. And right now we just haven't had the volunteers, but I think more of a reference at the museum would be a good idea. So I'll carry that forward.
Thank you.
Yep.
Great suggestion. Great suggestion. Any other comments or questions for Myron? All right. Our next item on the agenda is to talk about public versus private ownership. And we've had a lot of written feedback from residents of Old Shore Road and from our community. I know all of us have spoken, particularly at that first meeting, about kind of our feelings. And so I guess I'd like to open up the conversation to your feeling about whether the MnDOT portion, if this is something we feel should move publicly in the public direction for purchase by a private individual, or again, remain public. Let's keep it general in those terms at this point. So any comments or statements people would like to make? I guess I will state that I feel very strongly that this should continue to be a public space, not only because of the history of the Anishinaabe people, who were there for many, many years prior to the fire and have such a tremendous connection to this place and this space, but also because of the fact that this was the place that George Morrison's family lived, and because of the traditions in recent times for the community to use this space. But again, I feel strongly about it staying public, as I believe Chairman DeShaw said, important for people because there is so little space any longer that the public can go to Lake Superior and that they can go there to appreciate the waves and the wind and the water and the peace this brings. Tyson, I saw your hand was up.
I just thought maybe you should add in the public-private ownership discussion the suggestion that we support the band's acquisition of the property. I personally, that's to me, that seems to be the right thing to do. I also think, as I said before, their stewardship of their own lands is well demonstrated. They'd be excellent neighbors. So I'd like that included in the discussion.
I am happy you said that, and I agree with you 100%. I would like to see it public and to support the disposition of that property to Grand Portage. Mr. Homiak.
Bobby, do you have any sense for what rules you would apply to the land if the Grand Portage Band were to acquire it? by purchase from the state of Minnesota?
I would think we would expect nothing less than what we do on the reservation. You respect the land. We came from the land. We always respect the land. You know, if you've ever came up to Grand Portage, we have a pretty tight ship up here. We have a lot of ordinances and rules, and I think we're even a little more strict than the county is. So I think anybody that would be in disagreement with that needs to come up and visit us. And I was just looking on my phone there. There's another book that Tim Cochran wrote about Grand Marais, you know, and that explains a lot of the history.
I've read all of them.
Yeah. So, you know, it's a work in progress. You know, we're hoping it's going to be a joint thing with everybody at the table.
I'd like to go on record simply saying I encourage active management, and what I would discourage is laissez-faire management, which is what's been experienced by all of the property owners along here for decades. If the Grand Portage Band is going to do things like limit alcohol consumption, limit noise, limit hours, provide enforcement, then I'm an active advocate of Grand Portage Band's acquisition of the property. But right now, those are unknowns for me. And they're unknowns for the property owners along this specific stretch. And so I just need to better understand how putting it in the Grand Portage Band's land trust would impact the property owners, and what kind of active management and who would enforce those rules. I just don't know. Those are unknowns for us. So maybe, Bobby, at a future meeting, you could include an item on the agenda to explain how the Grand Portage Band would manage the property and what the rules would be and how they would be enforced.
Kelly, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was thinking before we approached about the Grand Portage, if they were to retain ownership, you know, a private owner could buy it and still keep it public. You know, you could find a lottery winner. I could do it. A group of 10 people could put in money, however it would be. You can still find a private ownership that says, hey, we want to keep this public. And then you're still, I don't know, I guess the property owners or whoever is still having the same conversations at that point. It's out of the hands of the county, but it's also unknown right now that it's hard to endorse anything because you just don't know who it would be and what they would do with it. So.
Myron, I see you have your hand up.
Sure. I think from the historical perspective, we would definitely support Grand Portage and would try to collaborate with them. This beach has historical significance. Mm-hmm. And for Chippewa City, as well as the artistic notoriety and Lake Superior, and is subject to George Morrison in almost all his work. So I think that we would definitely support having some kind of, you know, relationship agreements with Grand Portage, and how we could, you know, work together on historical significance of this area. I think if it went private, you would have to really tack on a lot of things in that purchase agreement about what the private owner would have to do. And Tyson, you would know better if that's even possible. But I would say that I would support Grand Portage, and secondly, then the county, in that order for that property. But I think if we can work together and maintain and retain this and make it historical, it should be done in that fashion.
Thank you. Stacy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just speaking for myself and not on behalf of anyone else. not on behalf of any Chippewa City descendants or band members or anyone else, just me. I think for the long-term look at this, contingent on if it becomes a part of tribal trust lands, the objective is to preserve the beach in a natural state. I've never ever gone on record saying anything but that. The beach is just perfect the way it is, and the land there needs to take a rest. All of this attention that is being drawn to it or called to it, I think is ultimately dangerous for our long-term plan. And so when I stand on the beach, I have my own experience with it, and that's the value of it. It's not telling someone how to experience it or suggesting that they see it in a certain way. And so I just want to put that out there as well.
Thank you very much. Other comments or remarks? Mr. Homiak.
I know you're tired of hearing from me. Stacy, there are some remediations required on the property, regardless of who buys it, whether it's the Grand Portage Band or it's the Cook County and operating it as a park, or a private individual, or the Historical Society. NOAA did briefings last year on shoreline erosion problems. And the reason the beach keeps getting bigger is because that entire lot is washing into Lake Superior from both sides. It's a drainage basin for the DOT. There are two streams that run through it that are leaching all of the remaining sand off of that property and onto the beach. And the wave action, I'm looking at the beach as I talk to you, and the beach is 75 feet deep, but it moves all the time. All it takes is a protracted nor'easter to completely move the beach to the west. And it's torn the entire shoreline of that section away, and trees are falling into the lake. So as much as I would like it entirely preserved in a natural state, I also would like the shoreline to be remediated with riprap to prevent the erosion that's occurring along the shoreline there. And so this committee, when they're looking at the financial aspects of property acquisition, which is what we're tasked with, we're tasked with recommending to the county whether or not to acquire the property. We're not tasked with, well, I'm certain we could come back and say, let's just let the Grand Portage Band acquire it and let's let them worry about the remediation costs. But there are remediation costs to protect that property. And that includes taking a look at the riprap requirements along that shoreline, and they're not inconsequential. The cost to do riprap along the shoreline, I did it along my property to protect the shoreline, or my house would be in the lake by now. And any buildings that are placed on that property are going to need riprap installed to protect them. So there's this balance between leaving it in a natural state and protecting the shoreline that everybody's interested in preserving. And it needs to be part of this discussion. Bob Hansen, a geologist, submitted a resume to be part of this committee. He's the property owner on the west side. And he's the one who can most eloquently speak on the topic of erosion and what needs to be done along that shoreline. And perhaps maybe you want to include him in a future meeting, invite him to join, and he can talk about it because he's been researching it for 10 years. But anybody who acquires it can't just leave it. It has significant drainage issues as a result of DOT's routing all of the water from the east end of Grand Marais right through the property. And it has erosion issues from the lakeside as a result of the high water levels and the increase in the ferocity of storms on the lake. So it isn't a simple matter of saying, let's just leave it the way it is. Let's buy it and leave it in its natural state. It's undergoing changes that you don't want to have happen to that property. Thank you.
Mr. Nelson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Dave does bring up a good point. However, to the extent of what would need to be done or not done is really relative about how somebody wants to manage that particular property. Yes, it could be an extensive overhaul of the property or so, and it may not be. And really, as somebody who's involved in permitting, riprap, and those triggers of conditions that need to have things done and such like that, just an acquisition of the property does not automatically trigger a whole new set of projects. It is certainly for something or somebody to be aware of to the extent that they are do their due diligence in terms of how they want that property to be, but it isn't necessarily an automatic trigger of multitudes of projects, but it is certainly worth understanding what the condition of the property is.
Mr. Homiak.
Well, whoever acquires it, if they want to be a good neighbor, all of the neighbors adjacent to those properties have riprap their property. The couple that acquired the DOT property most recently to the west indicated that they're going to riprap their property. What's happening is the waves are undercutting around the existing riprap and destroying the shoreline in between the riprap. And I mean, it's a well-known feature and you know it. I'm not here to lecture you on shoreline behavior. You're absolutely right. Whoever acquires it can decide what they want to do. They can continue to let the property be eroded, and they can continue to let the property erode around the riprap on both ends of it as well. Now, it's unlikely that somebody that invests that kind of money to buy this property is going to want to just let it wash into the lake. But it is of consideration, and you need to include it on your spreadsheet of costs for this property. Erosion control is a problem for this property, both from the mountainside as a result of the DOT's routing of drainage for the entire east side of Grand Marais, and it's a problem from the lakeside.
So I know that shoreline erosion is a huge issue, not only for this area, but all along Lake Superior. We have many issues that are coming to the forefront because of climate change. But our charge here as this committee is to determine the disposition of this property and to make a recommendation to the county board. And
well, that should be a financial recommendation as well, and it should include those costs. You can't make a recommendation to the county board without saying, oh, and by the way, you might have these future costs down the road, and you can't simply ignore them. They'll come around to the residents of the county. We'll end up, as James Yorkie is faced with every time he goes through a budget meeting, with allocation of funds. Are we going to riprap this piece of property, or are we going to repair a bridge?
So the discussion that we're having is focused on, again, public versus private. We need to determine that. And then once that is determined, we need to determine who is that public. Is that public going to be Grand Portage, or would that public entity be the county? So the first step I'd like to recommend is that we have a motion as to whether we want to recommend this property for public or for private. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion. I want to motion that it go to public.
Public. Okay, thank you, David. Is there a second to that motion? Thank you, Myron. Any further discussion?
Yes, I can't see hands. I have my hand up and I will wait my turn, and please alert me to when it is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So all in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you. Opposed? All right. Motion passes. So now we're looking at the property remaining public. And so we have some potential routes. Could this property be something we recommend to MnDOT be for Grand Portage, that it become part of their tribal trust land. We could also recommend to the county that they purchase this property. Any discussion around that? Further discussion? Myron?
Could the motion be supporting Grand Portage? And if that doesn't go through, that the county pursue either a lease or purchase?
We could do that.
I want to decline that idea because we haven't even hit the cusp of understanding enough, I think, to say so, in my opinion. I think we just need a motion, public or private, then we need to continue the discussion how that looks, personally. But that's just my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Kelly?
I also think too, at a future meeting, certainly not today, but that we would want to invite Chairman Deschamps to be able to give us a presentation. My understanding, and I know, Bobby, you can correct me, is they're looking to have MnDOT turn it over to you, not for purchase. Basically give it back to Grand Portage Reservation. But I would like to see a presentation then from Bobby as to maybe what their thoughts are for the area. I know he talked a little bit about, preserving the lands like they have in Grand Portage and how they take care of it, but maybe giving him a chance to give us a bit more information, just to hear from him. See, he's busy with.
I would welcome that as well.
So Chairman Deschamps, would that be something that you would be willing to do for the group?
What was that again? I had something here.
Okay. So Kelly, you want to repeat that?
So Bobby, my thought is before we make any type of recommendation as to, we said we want to keep it public, but I think we should offer you a chance to give us a short presentation or whatever you want to do about what Grand Portage would do if MnDOT returned the lands to the tribe, and what you would see for the future of it and what Grand Portage would like to do. I know you've talked about how you take care of the lands there at the reservation and preserve them, but maybe what you see the future of that area being.
You were at the first meeting, I already said that. No. No, I think, when I stated before there, I think it's, I've already been in contact with the North House there for like a timber frame place there where we can put some plaques up and tell the story of the Passion Pit, of our history there, and be able to enjoy the lake and this and that. We don't want some to get out of hand or anything, but we definitely want our story told there. So, John Moran, who's not on here tonight, his mother was born on that property because his whole family was. And then you add the George Morrison part into it there, and you look up in them graveyard. Look at all the names in that graveyard there. They're all from there, up and down the shore. So it's a great way to tell our story. And, you can basically even put a little thing up there on why treaties matter. It's I think it's a great opportunity, and as far as these meetings go, this meeting tonight there, I've heard nothing but an hour and 35 minutes of negativity. And if this is how it's going to carry on, it's not going to go anywhere.
Mr. Nelson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. David Rawl has his hand up. You can't see it, but it's.
Oh, I can't see it. Okay, David?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So here's just to help explain a little bit, I kind of see my role here as to help find the solution, right? And to hear everybody out and to try to find what that is. So with that being said, I've put some feelers out, talking to a lot of people, right? And all kinds of agencies who may or may not hold an interest with any of this. And one of the things that came back was the DNR did have an interest in making it a state park, But at the other hand, they felt the controversy involved left them in a place where it was hard for them to suggest so without it making it worse, per se. But what they did suggest was that they would possibly be interested in collaborating with the tribe or any other agencies related to create a partnership to make it a real state park and possibly even honor all the things we're talking about in between. So although there may or may not be negativity in between, which I agree with the chairman there, I want to say this. These discussions, they're hard. And I think the big thing is it's positive in the end. We're having them, you know, we're talking about how we all feel about it out loud. And it's really good to get it out there because there's no way to get there otherwise. But if we're concerned about, you know, let's back up a little bit and think about the big picture everybody said today, right? You had people talking about there's financial concerns to erosions, controlling the atmosphere there, and so many other things, right? And, you know, excuse me, it seems like this wonderful what if that came to me, you know, it's just a thought, suggestion to everybody to think about. What if the DNR and the tribe collaborated on this? What if the DNR could help create that enforcement platform, create a platform to manage trash waste, the affordability of managing the wear and tear of the place, whether it's coastline or tourist driven, and or accommodate everybody else in between. And the truth is, in a way, from my point of view as a public servant and regards to agencies and what they do with public funds, you know, all of them have their limitations. They all have their positives or negatives. But ultimately, that collaboration might actually fulfill all the worries of all the parties involved. And I will say this, I kind of held back with that because, you know, this is a committee looking to evaluate what the community had to say through survey of what people wanted. And until we heard what the people wanted, I really didn't have a right to bring that in. But what we're seeing is an overlap of interest to that effect. And with that being said, I just wanted to offer that idea and let people think about it. We don't have to debate it further, but it could be a possible outcome. And I think that it might be short-sighted to leave it off the table. That's a possibility with everybody involved. There might be a way through the forest, so to speak. So that's what I have to say about it, and thanks for hearing me out. Thank you. I leave my time to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. I appreciate your honesty, and I think it's wonderful to look at how we can collaborate, and clearly collaboration is what's going to see us through so that this committee can make a good decision for all. Other comments or suggestions at this point? So would you like at this point to move forward with our discussion and continue trying to determine what we want this public property to look like, who we would like the disposition to go to? Or would you like to take a break and come back to that at our next meeting? How do people feel? Tim.
I was just wondering, and I was going to ask Chairman Deschamps if it would be helpful in his request to MnDOT if there was a proposal put together that included some of the information David Roll had, maybe some of the presentation done by the Historical Society. You know, sometimes people will move in one direction or not based on the information you provide them. And I'm just wondering if this committee has a vision for how it could come together and work to benefit the public. And if there's value in that, and if that's what this committee could do to pull some support together for that request. I mean, I know the request is out there, but sometimes greasing the wheels makes the request go through a little bit easier. Just wanted to get your feedback on it, Chairman Deschamps.
Yeah, I think any support would be helpful for it. You know, we as a government here, we work government to government, so we actually work with the Commissioner of Transportation directly, and that's where I put my request in. And Dwayne's down the ladder there a little bit, and he's kind of guiding us through this whole thing. So, but any support that we can get is definitely helpful, and we appreciate it. And if you ever, and like I said before, if anybody ever wants to come up here and visit with us, come on up. My door is always open, so I'm always open for a conversation.
Thank you.
Myron.
Bobby, I know that you said something in your previous discussion that you would be working with, collaborating with other entities as well, and that would be your intention with this property if it ended up as a trust with you.
Yeah, I think that's the correct way to move forward with it. There is, let's do this together, let's develop it and see what, let's make it a great place.
So would it be helpful to have multiple letters of support, to have this committee make a recommendation to the county board and to have support, a letter of support from the DNR and a letter from the Cook County Historical Society supporting Grand Portage's acquisition of the property?
Yeah, that would be great.
Sure.
All right. So would
Yeah,
anybody-
I don't, sorry.
Go ahead.
Pardon me, Madam Chairman. I was just going to say that I think that's appropriate, and I can certainly try to reach out to those DNR officials and see where they're at with this, and if that's still the same discussion with them.
Thank you, David.
And see if they can go ahead and do so.
That'd be great. And Myron, could you reach out to the Historical Society in a similar fashion?
Right.
Okay.
I'll bring that to our next board meeting for approval. I'll either write something up or we can collaborate on it.
Great. Kelly?
I think, Bobby, that's something that I will probably bring back to the next city council meeting as well, and just ask their thoughts. And Jay has been very active. I know that I can't speak for Jay, but I would guess he would be very supportive of this. And I think talking to the other counselors and seeing what they think, and then possibly asking the mayor if he would write a letter of support also. But I will check into that and come back to you with it.
Thank you so much, Kelly. And would this group like to make a recommendation to support the disposition of the property to Grand Portage as well, and make that recommendation to the county board? Stacy?
I would give that my strongest recommendation.
Would you like to make a motion?
I will make a motion, but I don't know if I'll say it properly. Can I make a motion to for the committee to write a letter of support, a formal support for the acquisition of the property into the Grand Portage Bands Tribal Trust Land?
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion? Kelly? So Kelly has seconded that motion. Is there any other discussion? Mr. Homiak?
Bobby, how would the property be policed? You're 30 miles away from it. Is there a tribal police force that would be charged with, when a neighbor has an issue with something going on the property, who do they call? Do I call 911 and the county sheriff deals with it because you have a joint powers agreement, or is there a tribal police force? This is a question. I don't understand how this would work. And what I really am adamant about is that it not be unmanaged and there not be some enforcement organization that neighbors who have problems can reach out to. How would that work?
Under Public Law 280, we're under the same law enforcement that you are.
Okay, so the county sheriff would continue to be the point of contact and what rules would apply to that property. I'm not familiar with how tribal trust, and I apologize for my ignorance. What are the rules for tribal trust lands for things like alcohol consumption and hours and noise? And I don't know any of these things.
Yeah, that's something that could be talked about and set up in the process of it. You know, this isn't going to happen in the next. This takes a long time to go through.
Oh,
so,
it's been 25 years. I get it.
You know, it's a process. You think county governments deal with the federal government.
Yeah.
You know, and then
I'm not trying to diminish your pain. I want to understand so that people like Tim Witzman and Hanson's and the people that have purchased property and have lived here and owned property for years and years have some sense of closure and comfort that the property will be managed and that those rules, whatever they are, will have some enforcement agency. It's been a free-for-all, and that isn't respectful to your descendants, and it isn't respectful of the property. And my goal is to achieve some management and understand how that will work going forward.
You know, I think this is the perfect opportunity when it is, you know, when it does come to fruition, that we can educate people on the property, you know, on how the Anishinaabe people treat the land. It's a win-win. You know, we respect
it can
land.
be.
You know, and as far as I was listening to your comment on the riprap there, I just riprap 3,500 feet of the Bay Road here, so that's nothing. That ain't no big deal.
I hope you have some rock left over.
That's just a little project.
The land has an active history, and it's more than just your descendants. 3 years ago to this day, I held my dying father in my arms on that beach, 20 feet from the piece of property that we're talking about. He was 98 years old. None of you know my father or what he did or what he stood for. But the beach is very special to me as well. It's an active history. And if you believe the people's souls inhabit places, every day I walk on that beach, I walk in my father's soul. So I want you to know that it isn't just the Anishinaabe that have established history there. There were people there before the Anishinaabe, and there will be people there long after we're dead and gone as well. And we all want the land to be honored, and we all value the special place that is Lake Superior. Thank you.
Thank you both. So we have a motion and a second to support the disposition of the property to Grand Portage and make this recommendation to the county board. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So with that, we will conclude our meeting for this evening. We will get some letters in the works to hopefully bring back to this group at our next meeting. And if we take a look at our calendars, we've been meeting every 2 weeks, which I think is important since we're trying to manage this. So if we look at June 7th, that would be our next meeting. So 5 o'clock on June 7th. I will work on a letter to the county board and bring it back for your approval. And hopefully we'll have other letters presented again on that evening. Kelly, you have a question.
Madam Chair, were we trying to meet the second and fourth Monday of every month? I thought that's what we had set up.
Oh, that you are correct. So that would be the 14th, my error. Thank you so much. So it would be the 14th at 5 o'clock. Thank you so much.
We don't have our Cook County Historical Society board meeting until the third Thursday of the month, so I would more than likely have to present that at that board meeting, so I wouldn't have something, I could have a draft, but
Okay, that would be fine.
Yeah.
Thank you. Maybe we can bring back drafts to the group, and that's perfectly appropriate.
There's some sage for you guys tonight. Everybody have a great night.
Thank you so much, Bobby. Thanks
Thank
to
you.
all of you for your hard work, your bravery, and your courage. And we'll see you on the 14th.
And I guess I'll add one more thing. There is no word for goodbye in the Anishinaabe language. So Gigwabaman.
Igwabman.
Good work, everyone. Thank you.
Big wedge.
Yes, good meeting.
good night.
Night.
Good night.